Today we're going to fire up this IBM RS 6000 Unix workstation from the late 1990s. It weighs over 100 pounds and it's not easy to maneuver. Under its front panel it has three 6-drive backplanes. There we go. I know that sounds bad, but it's okay. Lovingly called 6-packs by IBM, and we'll figure out how to get some SCSI drives attached. We'll also experiment with using a BlueSCSI as both a hard disk and a CD-ROM emulator on this thing. I want to try upgrading to dual PowerPC processors, get the RAM slots maxed out, and install something called a service processor, which lets you remotely administer the machine. Finally, we'll move on to the software, get a period correct version of AIX, IBM's Unix variant, installed, see if we can't get this thing running Quake, maybe even draw a pixel perfect rendition of my cat in CorelDRAW 3.5. Let's get into it. This is an IBM RS 6000 F40 from 1996. It's got a single PowerPC processor inside, what IBM would have called a one-way machine, but it does have affordance for another, and we'll try to upgrade that today. RS 6000 stands for RISC System 6000. The hardware architecture of the RS 6000 eventually merged with the AS 400, which runs IBM I, and IBM still sells the descendants of these machines under the IBM Power brand. I bought this big thing a few years ago from Windman 486 in Kansas. It was being used by an ag co-op, an agricultural co-op, until the day it was unplugged. Tracking egg co-op things, you know, corn amounts. Look, I grew up in the city, so I'm not an authoritative source on what an egg co-op was doing with an IBM RS 6000. Though I did visit many farms as a kid over the course of the summer when my parents would go on road trips over to the Midwest because I'm related to half the state of Minnesota. But I can tell you one thing, whatever this thing was doing for the egg co-op, it was probably doing it really well and no problems at all until the day it was unplugged. These things started selling in November 8th of 1996. They sold them for about 4 years, and end of support only happened June 30th, 2017. 21-year support lifespan on this bad boy, and as we open it up and take a look around, I think you're going to see why. It's well built. So it probably goes without saying, this thing is absolutely huge. It must weigh upwards of 100 pounds. It's incredibly difficult to get up here on the bench. It slots into this little stand, and it's also very hard to get it slotted in correctly. You kind of have to lift it somehow, and even though half the little clips are busted, there's still a couple of them, and you still have to kind of get it in the right spot. And now that I'm looking at it, I might not have fully succeeded here. That's okay. On the back there's a spot where like wheels would have been, so you can lift it up. I'll show you the handle on the front in a second and kind of move it around. I don't have those. I've actually got some like felt things taped to the bottom of this stand so that I can move it around relatively easily without making a ton of noise. There's a little handle on the front where you would lift it up and wheel it around, I guess. As is tradition, we should probably measure just how big this thing really is. I ran out of measuring tape, but it's roughly 36 zip 100 discs squared. And in case you needed to know this, this part of the stand is pretty much exactly 2 Bernoulli 150 discs high. Probably exactly the specification IBM built it to. I did a video on this before a while ago, but I didn't really do anything with it. We just sort of had a look around, turned it on, didn't really sort out the hard drive situation. Today we're going to get AIX installed on this thing. Well, hopefully. And we're going to do some upgrades. I think we're going to do a dual CPU upgrade, hopefully. Some RAM upgrades, and I'll show you here. Back in here, there's a part I'd like to replace. But before all that, let's have a quick look around. I'll show you all the parts, see, tell you what this thing's all about. The first thing you notice about this machine is the very unique case design. It's got some brutalist architecture, I guess you could say. I think it looks great. These are pretty impressive machines in their own right, especially for the time frame they're from, but I just can't help but love how they look. So it's got this first piece here that opens up and gives you access to the different media. Got some expansion bays here. It came with a tape drive, which is in rough shape. I'll show you that. We'll see if I'm adventurous enough to tackle that in this video. We got a CD-ROM drive, floppy, the power button, of course. I think that's a reset switch, and then a microphone and audio jack, because you might have had this sitting under your desk. It's actually not very loud. That is actually a reasonable thing you could have done. And then it's got the key lock. Luckily, I have the key. Now, this doesn't do anything with machine behavior or anything. Well, I don't believe. Maybe I should check that. But I know for sure it is required to unlock it to take this front case off. And something very fortunate about this machine, and I've been super vigilant about keeping it safe, is this front panel just kind of comes off like this. The hinge mechanism just consists of these 2 plastic posts, and mine are intact. Now this is really nice plastic, but it's getting old and I'm moving this machine around, so I try to be insanely careful with this piece whenever I'm messing with this machine. I take this piece off, I put it like 10 feet away so I don't mess with it. And then this whole front panel comes off, and if you've seen one of these, you won't be surprised, but there are drive bays under this. A lot of drive bays, lots of expansion. So let's see, we unlock it. There's another clip here, and this is another failure point I'm going to have to deal with sooner rather than later. When this is closed, it's compressing a rubber disc, I'll show you, and it holds this front panel to the case. So you can release that, and then this won't be very graceful because it's kind of hard to do, but you pop this out of some metal retaining clips. Oh man, I hate doing this. There we go. I know that sounds bad, but it's okay. And theoretically it hinges down like that, but as you can see, the plastic on mine broke off long ago, so those usually clip into here. So this just kind of free floats normally. You can't really tell when the machine's just sitting there. And we've got 18 drive bays. I've populated a few with sleds. I've got more sleds. And in fact, I realized I'm storing them in a box, which is taking up space. And I'll get them all here in this video because I should just store them in here. This machine has a SCSI backplane, but it's kind of got a funny connector, which is hard to deal with back in there. We'll be talking a lot about SCSI in this video. That clip I undid on the left, it's got a little rubber disc that slots into this hole. I guess it's kind of a disc, it's more of a donut. And so as you can see, when I push this down, it compresses and grabs on to that hole. And the rubber on this is failing. So it does still work, but right there, there's a pretty big crack in the rubber. I think I could probably glue that back. Well, no, glue is the wrong answer here, but yeah, I'm gonna have to do something about that someday. It's also got this screen on the front with a dedicated board here, and it gives you some progress indicators as it boots up. I'll show you that when we turn it on. This thing has all sorts of little bits of plastic that are, cracking and breaking off just because of its age, not because of abuse. But as we were moving it, I think as they loaded it into the vehicle to meet me in Kansas, this LED broke off. Now I could replace these, of course, but I'll show you what I'm going to do about that in a second. They are sort of unique looking LEDs. They're not just the typical ones you would get in a little, hobbyist kit for an Arduino or whatever. I think this one might be kind of broken too. Of note though, is that there are 3 green ones and 3 yellow ones, and I need to go look up in the documentation what all of these mean, because when you put the case on, this little light path only shows you the top one. That's the power LED. So it's intended that you would open this up and use those for other troubleshooting procedures, I guess. So we'll have to look up in the documentation what each of these means. But in true IBM fashion, it's pretty easy to get this thing out of here. There's one clip here, and then just a ribbon cable. And it's sort of a self-contained little unit. And in 2024, a viewer named Rory sent me a bunch of interesting RS6000 stuff, all the way from the Netherlands. I do like the honest customs declaration, obsolete IBM CPU, RAM, and LCD. eBay sellers, take note. Oh, they know what they have though, don't they? Look at all this stuff. Bunch of RAM for this machine. Another PowerPC CPU, which I believe is exactly what we need for this F40 to get it into two-way mode. And then this bad boy. A replacement LCD screen. How wild that he had this sitting around with the LEDs intact. I have to clean it up a little bit. After we power this thing on, make sure everything's cool. We're going to swap this in and see if it just works. That is awesome. Moving on, let me show you what I can only describe as a garage door to get into this thing. It's also got some latching headaches that we might actually be able to solve in this video. Just look at this monster. Very serviceable. Pretty easy to get in here except for the media bays. I'll show you those headaches later. Massive power supply. It's only one cord coming in the back, but it takes up the whole bottom of the chassis. Absolutely huge. Tons of PCI slots. You can also slap in some ISA cards if you were so inclined. This one has a video card, which is pretty interesting. So maybe they were using some sort of visual application at the old egg co-op. SCSI controller. I believe it also has onboard SCSI. But this one has the controller card because there were tons of different options. So on the front there with all those bays, by default, only the top one would be populated. That's what IBM called a 6-pack, believe it or not. This one's got 3 6-packs. So it's got this SCSI card here. These are going to 2 of the front bays. This is the single PowerPC processor it's got in there right now. I think it's operating at 166 megahertz. And they've got this like Pentium 2 slot 2 situation where you can put another one right here. And then we got all sorts of RAM. Let's pull 2 different, physically different looking RAM sticks. Let's pull one of each out. So one of those and one of those, see what we got. Despite this one being slightly physically taller, they are both 128 megs of RAM, IBM branded, and it's ECC RAM, server RAM. So let's see here. Well, I was going to give you some lecture about how many megabytes or kilobytes each of these chips is storing and proving that there's extra ones on there, but suffice it to say, error code correcting RAM, aka ECC, or what myself and others sometimes call server RAM, because it's usually in a enterprise server, has extra RAM chips for parity checking, meaning it can notice when one of the other RAM chips is bad, and you get better uptime and your egg co-op stays online. These are the 2 I just pulled out of the machine. They both have IBM stickers, so they were ordered via IBM. And this one's kind of interesting. It's got some chips that are clearly from Korea, which makes sense. And this one has IBM labeled chips on it. So there's a chance this one was made in the US, perhaps. And this one is probably slightly newer. And the ones from Rory are even newer because they're clearly from Korea. They were made by Samsung. I'm going to go see what the story is with these. Shada Electronica. Is that a Nederlanda thing? These are also 128 meg sticks, which means if they're compatible, which I believe they are, we'll be able to max out all these slots. We're going to have a gig of RAM in here, boys. Now that I'm thinking about it, that's probably contingent on one very important piece, which is, can I put another CPU in there? I haven't read, well, I have read the documentation, but I haven't memorized it. I'm pretty sure this CPU can probably address, use 4 of these. The other one can use the other 4. Let's compare CPUs. It is just sort of in a RAM slot. Come on. Okay. There it is. This is a PowerPC 604E, I believe, 166 megahertz. Let's compare it to the second one I've got. Same form factor and everything, but the second one, this is from the machine. I just pulled it. This one's definitely a little different. The part numbers don't match up. The one I just pulled has a IBM FRU number. What's that stand for? Field Replaceable Unit. This one does not have a field replaceable unit from IBM. What were you guys doing over there in Europe? The one I got from Rory also has this fun feature. Probably all right. At any rate, when the time comes and we're going to try to slot this in, I'll compare these part numbers and see what I've got. And we will hope for the best. But in the meantime, I'm going to slap all the original stuff back in. And I'll show you the back of the machine, and we'll power it on. Chloe has shown up at the most inopportune time. That was impressive, Chloe. And the whole thing's open, and she's going to get hair everywhere. Chloe, don't touch that. Before I show you all the ports on the back, I want to show you an interesting slot on the main board in here. That little guy right down in there. There's a little guide for the card that slots in, but it doesn't poke out the back. It doesn't have any ports. That is for an optional service processor. It is a very early form of remote management. So it shares the 2 serial ports on the back, which I'll show you, which you can plug modems into, and you could remotely power this thing up. As long as it has power, you can turn the machine on, I mean to say. IBM says easier remote administration, remote power off and on, and control the system boot process. Specifically, you can get into an ASCII mode of SMS, the Systems Management Services. It's actually pretty impressive that we've gotten this far into an IBM video, and I haven't been really throwing a lot of acronyms at you. I think that will change pretty soon here. So we've got SMS, the System Management Services. I will be able to show you that visually once we plug this thing in. Sort of like a BIOS. I would call it a BIOS. That's the analogy here. I bought one on eBay. Should be here in 2 days. So my intention is it'll make it into this video. And I'm not associated at all with Worldwide Trade Corp, but that eBay account has tons of RS6000 gear. They ship really fast. They pack really well. The prices are mostly fair, sometimes kind of expensive, but they're also selling a bunch of stuff you're just not going to find anywhere else. So I totally get it. This thing went out of service in 2017. I bet that service processor is present in more than just this machine, and I bet a lot of these RS6000s are still running in production today. So I kind of understand the pricing. Let's look at the back. Then we'll power this thing on and I'll teach you about SMS. This thing is so huge. The camera is maybe 4 feet away from it to even get the whole thing in frame. But at the top, we have the shared ISA and PCI slots, bunch of those. We've got the VGA card. This is coming out of the back of the SCSI card, so you can hook some SCSI devices or disks up here. Looks like there was, what was that? Someone had a PCI card in here at one point. All the bays are numbered, so 1 through 9P, meaning PCI, I assume. And then I said the ISA and PCI slots at the top are shared. You can only do one or the other. So you can have an ISA card in here, or a PCI card in here, or whatever combination of the two you want. Lower down, we've got what I believe is audio in and out, probably line level. And then the serial ports. So these two serial ports, S1 and S2, the service processor slot I was mentioning shares these. So we'll be able to access the service processor over these. And hopefully we get to do that in this video. Then we've got a parallel port. Someone labeled it Centronics, which is helpful. That's a connector style. PS2 mouse, keyboard, interesting slot here. This would have been for devices that help in like AutoCAD, you know, computer assisted design situations. I don't have one of those. I do want to install AutoCAD on this though. Hopefully we get to do that later. A little lower, we've got the AUI port. That is a network interface port. And we've just got onboard Ethernet, which is really nice for a big old honka machine of this vintage. This AUI port, or attachment unit interface, is a networking interface form factor that was typically used for 10^5 Ethernet, so 10 megabit per second Ethernet, sometimes called ThickNet. And in practice these days, you get a little adapter and you slap it in there and it turns it into the RJ45 connector. But I've already got one of those. Maybe we'll do that just for fun. I don't know. And here we've got more SCSI coming out the back from the onboard controller. So remember there was that card in there. There's also an onboard SCSI controller. The power supply takes up the whole bottom of the case. Only one connector, so no redundant power. I think what I have here though is a optional expansion kit. I don't know that the power supply was always this big in the default configuration, and I'm pretty sure that's the case because I have all 3 6-packs on the front. I will dig through the documentation and give you more detail on that later. And because I don't think I've said it yet, this is technically a IBM RS6000 Type 7025, aka an F40. Ooh, and I was right, it weighs 110 pounds, and that's probably without the discs inside. Mine doesn't have any discs. This thing is so heavy, 50 kilograms for the rest of you. Okay, let's actually do something here. We've got a monitor, mouse and keyboard, all in one compact deal. Hooked up, I'm gonna give it power, and there's no way I'm gonna be able to record this. A very high-pitched whine. It doesn't turn on until I press the button, the power button on the front. But a very concerning, terrible noises it makes, that power supply. I tried to record it and it stopped. So maybe that's a temporary thing when it's starting up. We've got some lights, a green blinker here, solid green here. Of course we don't know what's going on with the one that's missing. And this one just blinks. And then it's really not loud at all. It's a very quiet machine because it was meant to be on a desk. Takes a minute for it to show you something visually. I'll show you what it's like over the serial port after we upgrade this bad boy, hopefully with another CPU here. It does have a speaker inside, so we should hear a very nice chime that will give maybe PTSD or good memories to some of you. Let's wait a minute. It's been many minutes and I'm not getting anything. So something is wrong. This video just got a lot more interesting. I booted this thing up last night, no problems, a couple times. I'm not getting anything over this LCD screen. Usually it says like okay, and or at least some progress indicators. I'm getting nothing. Yeah. Should we just try again? This is not good, folks. Oh, I have a theory. I didn't put the CPU back in. Yeah, that's not gonna work. Let's kill the power. Fun fact, only experts know this. Computers don't work really well if you don't have a processor inside. Alright, the RAM's back in. It has a processor now. That's what I get for filming over the course of 2 nights. Me and the boys got pretty ripped up on Minecraft last night. I'm not gonna lie to you. Forgot where I left off. Interestingly, gave it power again. You can see the lights blinking. Now the power supply is making no noise. So some sort of... I'm not an electrical engineer. Let's try this very simple procedure again. See where we get. Heard a beep. That's good. I'm seeing progress indicators on the front screen here. I'll show you those later. We'll have many more reboots throughout the course of this video, I suspect. We're going to hear a chime when it's testing the speaker. Actually, it's more of a song. That's not the one. There we go. SMS. It's coming. I'm going to press F1. It's mad about something. There we go. System management services. I'm not a total idiot. You can even use the mouse. Let's go look at... I'm not going to use the mouse. Let's go look at config. This is sort of like the BIOS. That's what I would call it. Yes, and you can learn everything about the machine. So it's got 428 meg sticks. It knows it's got a PowerPC 604E at 167 megahertz. I was off by 1 megahertz. It knows about all the integrated SCSI and Ethernet cards and all that. Yeah, that is good. Now there's no disk in here, so I believe if we, by default, just... Well, we can go look at the boot order, I guess. Yeah, it's looking for the SCSI CD-ROM, diskette. There's no drive, so it doesn't know anything about hard drives. And then Ethernet. And I think if we go tell it to boot, all of those will fail, and it will try to start net booting. So it says starting software, and then it's got this ugly little white thing here that it always does. It's hitting the floppy drive, it's hitting the CD-ROM. It's going to give up, and we'll see some boot P messages, I think. And it will try to boot over the network, which obviously isn't going to work. Actually, there is an AIX disk in there that I forgot about. I don't know if I caught those blinking lights in time. It might actually boot from the disk that's in there. Whoops, spoilers. This is the AIX installer starting up. We can go a little further, I guess. The point is, this machine is healthy. This is booting from the SCSI CD-ROM with a copy of AIX, IBM's Unix variant that I've got in there, that we will eventually install on a hard disk. That's going to be a whole nother section of this video. And I do really like that they emulated like a green screen terminal. I have two RS6000s, and both of them do this. Or maybe it's an AIX thing, I don't know. But I like it. I don't know if you can see from this angle, but you do get status indicators, progress codes, all sorts of information on the LCD panel here. So the thing works in its current configuration. That was a little bit of a mess proving it to you. Let's see if we can't make everything worse by upgrading the CPU and RAM. So we're going to add that other PowerPC and more RAM. Based on the markings on this additional CPU I've got, I'm having trouble determining exactly what speed it is. So it needs to be the same speed as the one that's in there for the machine to work. I'm not going to hurt anything by putting it in there if they're different speeds. But I can't quite tell. So the first thing we're going to do is put these RAM sticks in. And I was reading that the single CPU that's in there can access all 8 RAM slots. So let's try that first. And that clearly must be the case because mine are not in like a, sometimes there's like 2 banks. My bottom slot is not populated, as you can see right here. So it is accessing, if you start from the top, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So I think we're going to be okay. Let's put the RAM in first, get into SMS, see if it likes it. Still the single CPU, but RAM is fully populated, so we should have a gig of RAM, I think. We'll find out. Booted up just fine, got into SMS, and it likes it. We can see all 8 128 meg sticks. So now we're going to try putting this other processor in there, which you're not supposed to touch. It's in, so I was making a joke about the no touch sticker before, and it's valid. This machine ran for, I don't know, maybe 2 minutes, but I suspect after, I don't know, an hour, you wouldn't want to be touching that, so it gets really hot. Not too much of a surprise, I guess. We'll see what we get. Yeah, it's been a few minutes, and it won't post, for lack of a better word. I suspect that other processor is a different speed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to swap them. So I'll pull this out, I'll put this one in that position. They were both definitely running based on the temperature. And maybe this one's faster than what I had, because I'm really putting this machine to work. But it would be cool to have a faster CPU anyway. It won't boot with that other CPU in there, even in the original slot. I don't actually know if the slots matter. So it's either dead or not compatible with this machine, which would be very IBM of them. Let me swap in the other one and make sure this I haven't killed this thing, and we'll just forge ahead with tons of RAM. We're good to go. Let's make sure it sees all the RAM again. It does. That's a lot of RAM. This concludes our upgrade portion of the video. The best that I could glean is this also a 604E, but it is a 41L6111, which might be a 233 megahertz processor. We need to solve the hard drive problem. We have a gaping hard drive problem here. Let's do that next. So as you saw, this thing has both an onboard and additional PCI SCSI card. SCSI is used for these media devices and these bays here, and all the 6-packs, the drives. Down in there, we've got what I think are called SCA connectors and the German Autobahn symbol, because this thing's just so fast. And I've got a handful of these drive sleds that are intended for this machine. It breaks it out to this style of SCSI connector, a pin header to select the ID of the drive on the SCSI chain. I'll explain that in a second. And then power over a Molex connector. There's that funky looking connector that the backplane needs. And of course it's obviously carrying power, the ID settings, and the actual SCSI data. Now if we take a look at the IBM handbook for this F40 and a couple other RS6000 models from IBM, all 298 pages of it, there's a pretty choice quote in there. It says, "It is very likely that you will face problems regarding configuration and installation of SCSI adapters and devices." So let's use this as an opportunity to do a quick SCSI refresher. SCSI stands for Small Computer System Interface, and yes, it is pronounced SCSI. We will do this with the help of my IBM flowcharting template. You can flowchart all sorts of useful stuff. A punched card, magnetic tape, online storage. That's what we're dealing with today, actually. That was really fun to use. Didn't have a CD-ROM symbol, so I used the punched card. So you've got a controller, and on the SCSI bus, you can daisy chain devices, and they each get a unique ID. There was narrow SCSI. You could have 8 devices on the bus, and then they had wide SCSI, 16 devices on the bus. So you'll see narrow and wide used a lot. So you've got a controller, and you daisy chain these devices together on the bus, and they each get a unique ID on the bus. Back in the day, the device would configure its ID. Later on, in these days with SAS and stuff, they kind of auto-configure. You don't have to worry about this as much. Typically, the controller is ID 7, and in fact, that's what this machine is doing. One of the controllers in there is ID 7, and you can see the CD-ROM is ID 4. So each of these things needs an ID. 1, 2, 3. And it doesn't have to be disks. You can have media devices or any device that supports SCSI. So let me show you another example. We'll try to stick with the IBM theme. This is an IBM Ultrium LTO2 tape drive. You can see right there on the back, it's got an in and out to do a daisy chain to other SCSI devices. And you can tell it what ID on the SCSI bus it needs to be. Let's see, last time I was 10. I think you just go like that. Now it's 11, 12. Some devices will do something called auto terminate. Some devices won't, but the last device in the chain needs to terminate in some way. Here's an example of a physical terminator you would put on the last slot in your cable to terminate the SCSI chain. Now you can also do stuff like one of these things might be a big disk array, and then you've got something called a LUN, L-U-N, and then it could branch off and have other IDs underneath it. We don't have to worry about that for this F40, I don't think. But this is the basic idea. This is SCSI in a nutshell. Which brings us to, how are we going to get a hard drive in this thing? I've got at least 2 options. I bought some of these SCSI drives for more than I paid for the machine itself, so I'm not proud of that. It does have all the right connectors on the back. It will fit in the sleds I've got. These are 146.8 gig UltraSCSI drives. The F40 did have 5 different SCSI adapters that might have shipped with it or that you could upgrade to, some of which were UltraSCSI. Typically though, SCSI devices are backwards compatible, so if I plug perhaps a faster drive into a slower bus, it might still work. But we also have another interesting option, a BlueSCSI. A BlueSCSI is a SCSI device emulator. It can emulate CD-ROMs, it can emulate hard drives. Basically, I can put a blank image file on here. It'll pretend to be a 512 byte sector disk and present itself on the SCSI bus. This comes with a ton of other headaches with regards to this machine. It's got that 50-pin SCSI connector. Pretty much all the internal connectors in the machine, almost all of them, are this guy. And the back plane is choosing the device ID. So this little cord right here plugs into a SCSI hard drive like this and tells it what device ID it is. Pretty sure that's how that works. I don't really know if I have the equivalent here. I'm sure there's a way to tell this what device ID to be, and then I could just match up to the bays. The documentation is pretty thorough there. That might be an option someday. 3D print a tray or something to mount this to, get it in one of these trays, figure out the ID situation, and then these adapters are readily available, and I'm going to need them anyway. But I think what we're going to do is use this media bay in here. There are two SCSI connectors with power back in there that we'll be able to branch off and adapt to the BlueSCSI. And to that end, I've got the 50 pin to 68 pin adapter we need. I think it's just passive. Got a power splitter, and I've got a Molex big style to floppy style adapter. I actually stole that SCSI adapter off of a CD-ROM from another RS6000 I have, so I need to get that back in there. This one is like really well made. It's just one solid piece. And so I bought another one on Amazon. It's like way sketchier. There's clearly a circuit board in here. I mean, it's just wires connecting to wires, but I don't know. We'll try this one. I haven't used it yet. I know this one works. I've started the adapter journey, but first, let me show you what you do here. How you get an image on this SD card. Other thing of note, basically drew out that SCSI stuff so I could show you this. This is whether this thing will auto-terminate or not. And I have it off because I'm going to be in the middle of a SCSI chain. So I'm reading through the very thorough documentation, and there are 4 media bays in the top, as you've seen. One is a diskette drive, one is a CD-ROM drive at SCSI ID 4, which you also saw in the SMS menus. Then we've got 2 open bays here. By default, bay 2 is SCSI ID 5, and this bay is SCSI ID 6. So we're going to set ourselves up with the BlueSCSI, which is somewhere, SCSI ID 5, and also, of note, this is a SCSI machine. They could be equipped with SSA, which was some IBM proprietary SCSI competitor, I guess. They did open up the standard later. Long story short, if you pick one of these up, or you're thinking about it, I don't even know how you would be able to tell, but do your very best to avoid SSA, because good luck finding those drives. So now I'm looking at it. It says, for SSA, at least the boot disk must be SCSI. Then you can use SSA disks. So maybe you'd be okay. This document is very dense. This is the SCSI section. Granted, it's covering several machines, but they're mostly the same. It's a lot. So, got a SD card in there. It is formatted with exFAT, I think. Let's take a look. Yes, the exFAT file system. So, do that. And then I'm using Linux so I can have access to the very useful dd command. And I'm writing a bunch of nothing to an out file called HD5. So this is the BlueSCSI naming convention saying this thing is a hard drive. It's going to expose itself as a SCSI hard drive with ID 5. I doubt it's required for me to match this, but I am going to put it in Bay 2. So I'm just going to stick with the IBM default so I don't inadvertently conflict with anything, especially if we want to start messing with these 6-packs down here. This means the disk has 512 byte sectors, which is what this RS6000 running AIX wants. And we're going to let that rip. And it takes 0.0004 seconds. I guess I should also note I made a roughly 4.5 gig drive simply because that's what I was reading came standard with these machines. So just trying to cut out any variables here. Then you copy that to the SD card and that's it. You put the BlueSCSI on a SCSI bus and it should expose that as a hard drive, a 4.5 gig hard drive with nothing on it, 512 byte sectors, and sitting at ID 5 on the SCSI bus. That is the BlueSCSI setup. Pop this in here. It will expose itself as a hard drive, SCSI ID 5. I'll get it connected up in here. We're going to need to use some power splitters and of course the adapter to turn this into floppy power. I'll try to get in here later the best I can with the camera. Let me show you what actually came with this machine. A big old SCSI tape drive. And it was a little banged up when I got it. I pulled a couple pieces apart years ago. So we've got this piece. And then this is what it, would have looked like. I don't even know if I have this on the right way. Yeah, I probably did. Something like that. So it would have looked really good in there. I have the flap somewhere floating around here. It was broken. This is hilarious. I did not know this. one of those adapters I need was sitting right on the back of this thing the whole time. There's no way I'm going to get this thing working in this video, unfortunately. I would like to eventually get it working. That's so funny. I bought another adapter on Amazon, stole one of the adapters out of another RS6000. I had one sitting here the whole time. This one's going to be rough. Literally, this thing just fell out of it while I turned it over. I stored all these pieces somewhere. They're down here somewhere. The basic idea is you'd have this on there, which I can't even accomplish. There's also this ribbon cable that needs to go into that slot there. Nightmare. Absolute nightmare. I'll have to ask Winman, the guy I bought it from, if he remembers the story about why this was so banged up. It's really nice. It's a pretty cool IBM branded tape drive. Takes real big tapes physically anyway. So yeah, obviously you get that slotted in there, that's going to look real nice. I don't think that's going to happen. Well, I know that's not going to happen today. That will be another video someday when we revive this tape drive. I'm going to have to get a lot smarter, I think. But in the meantime, let's get a BlueSCSI in here. There is a... Man, it's going to be so hard to film this. There's not a lot of working room in here. Using my phone flashlight to show you what's up here. There is some SCSI cabling going in there. One of them is by default supposed to be ID5 and then 6. There's a floppy style Molex connector that was broken when I got the machine, so I've taped it up. The pins are falling out. Way down in there, some power I'm going to branch off of. And in fact, base 6, which is this cord, was taped over from the factory. There you go, you can kind of see it taped. This one is not. Yeah, that's the one we're going to plug the BlueSCSI into. There's not enough power back there. I don't know what that tape drive would have been plugged into, so I'm going to branch off what the CD-ROM is plugged into today, right here. We'll power the BlueSCSI, we'll power the CD-ROM, because I'm going to need that to install AIX. I'm going to snake all this back in there. One more fun thing about this I want to show you, and as I brought it back on the bench, another piece fell out. This poor guy is in rough shape. It's got two Molex power connectors, one here and one here. And there is some documentation on the side. It says one of them is for the drive and one of them is for the loader. I don't like this thing at all. Someday, I do have all the parts that have fallen off of it over the years, and we'll get it working because that would be pretty sweet to see that on the front of the F40. Like I was saying, I do have the flap, for lack of a better word. I found it. Here it is. Bunch of busted plastic. I don't even know how this thing would even work. And then there's this thing, also broken. Yeah, it's gonna be super sweet if I ever get this to work. I have the spring that this requires somewhere as well. Yeah, that could be a 8-hour video. Got the BlueSCSI all hooked up in there. Speaking of CAD, got some cardboard assisted design here. Cardboard aided. Anyway, it's on a piece of cardboard. I hadn't plugged this in over 24 hours, and yeah, the power supply is making nice whining noises again as it warms up. Let me know in the comments what that's about. Appears to work though. Let's see if it sees the BlueSCSI or just doesn't turn on. Huh. Hold the button a little longer, I guess. Saw the lights on the BlueSCSI do something. That seems like a good sign. I like that. Machine booted. I'm loading up the config now. Ooh, look at that. A 4.7 megabyte hard disk, which is more or less correct. It is at the ID I set it to 5. So let's go look at the boot order again. It has taken it upon itself to remove my CD-ROM from the boot order and choose the hard drive, which isn't going to work. So I have a hard time dealing with this menu. Let's see what it does with defaults. Wonder if I accidentally unplugged my SCSI CD-ROM. 1 second. I definitely did. Doesn't see the CD-ROM anymore. Yeah, it's got power. Alright, I probably pulled the connector out accidentally. I'll be back. Oh yeah, it was halfway out. So I'd pulled this a little bit to get my hands in there to mess with the BlueSCSI. So yeah, I think we're okay again. The progress indicators on the front are actually very legible. The video camera doesn't pick them up very well. That's a little better. Let's see what default does again. I see my floppy drive is missing, so I probably banged the cord out of that as well. But we hopefully don't need it for this adventure. That's a better default. It's going to start with CD-ROM and then advance to my hard disk. So let's exit here, tell it to boot, and we should boot into AIX again, and we'll see if AIX can see the drive. If you're doing this at home, this part's pretty slow. This drive's probably really old. My disk is new and clean, so it's not my disk for once, but yeah, it'll spin the drive a little bit. Nothing happens. Spin it a little more, but eventually we should get into the AIX installer. The top bright yellow LED is lit while this is happening. There it is, doing a little bit of drive activity. That must be CD-ROM activity. It blinks when this blinks. Interesting. We're getting there. This install is going to take hours. This drive is so slow. I have more BlueSCSIs on the way. So what could be really cool is another one emulating the AIX image. I think that would really speed things up here, but they're in the mail still. But we are in the AIX installer. Let's go to option 2 to take a look at what it thinks. This is really good news. It believes it sees a hard disk. Let's go look at that. Yes, it sees the 4.5 gig disk, and it is bootable. Interesting. Okay. Massive progress. I think in the end I will install it to the BlueSCSI shortly, because I just want to see if that works. I want to see what the performance is like on a machine like this. But now I'm really curious. I think we go for broke and throw some of these drives in a sled and see if the machine just detects them. Just purely for science. These are UltraSCSI. These might be actually faster than the BlueSCSI. Got one screwed into a sled. These are not the typical IBM quality you would be used to, I feel confident saying. The whole sled just feels like a janky afterthought. I don't know. It's okay, I guess. We'll see if it works. I keep waffling back and forth. If this drive is detected, it probably realistically for me makes more sense to install on it, because I don't really have a mounting solution for the BlueSCSI, and I need to use it for other stuff. For good luck, let's get all the other sleds in there. For some reason I thought I had like 10 or 15 of these sleds, but I only bought 6, enough for the full 6-pack, which is actually pretty reasonable. So we'll get them in there so I don't have extra ones floating around in the shop. This one's populated. Let's let her rip. That one had an activity indicator, briefly. Yep, I hear the drive spinning up. And obviously yellow light here, not here. Okay. Hopes and dreams dashed. It at least is not seeing it here. Now I'm curious. I wonder, it's odd that both of these are called integrated SCSI controllers. They can be on the same ID if they're independent controllers. And it seems to be implying to me that there are 2 of them. But it calls them integrated. It's odd that it would call the PCI board an integrated SCSI controller is what I'm saying. I'm going to open it back up and experiment a little bit. I'm also going to read through that ream of documentation. Could also be a bad drive. These things are getting pretty old. Well. Look who showed up. A 146 gig drive at ID 8. I ran the simplest experiment I could think of, which was to put it in another bank. And that appears to have worked. That sort of implies to me that maybe something's wrong with this bank. That could be true. Or somehow this is also configured to ID 5, which I put this one on. So there's a conflict there. But they're clearly, all this stuff up here is clearly part of at least this bay in this bank, because they are both under this first integrated SCSI controller. All 3 items are, in fact. I'm sure it's in the documentation. I remember reading something about it, how these bays are kind of split out amongst the controllers. I'm still suspicious that we only see integrated controllers. We see no indication of that PCI controller. So let's run one more experiment. Let's take a tray out. These are hot swappable, but I'll probably shut it off while I do this. Put the other drive in the bottom, see where it shows up, if it shows up. In case you wanted to know how this goes, I would recommend doing the power first, because it has the least amount of play. And then this ID ribbon cable is keyed. Thank God. And then you jam the other one in there. And you're kind of moving. And then the way the holes line up, you got to push this back real far and compress those cables down in there. Here's the current setup. BlueSCSI still where it was. This one we can detect. New one down here. It spun up, and I can tell because this one is real loud. I'm not surprised it doesn't detect it, because I don't think I'm even seeing my entire controller that bank is plugged into. I think I've solved the mystery. This card's not working. These two cables coming off of it, they end up on the top bank and the bottom bank. And so far we have not been able to detect drives on the top bank and the bottom bank. This one is daisy chaining off the integrated control. Oh, here's how that tape drive would have plugged in. Guess I could have snaked these over there and wouldn't have to. Anyway, way back in here, this is the integrated controller cable where it starts out of the planar and it snakes its way up into here through all the media devices and the BlueSCSI and ultimately ends up down here on the second bank, this middle bank of the three, where we can see drives. So that's fine. I don't really need more than one drive, but I'm going to reseat this card. I'll pull it out, clean the contacts, reseat it. You never know. Here it is. It's got a PowerPC of its own, of course. FRU part number 76H3587. Couple Adaptec chips, couple IBM chips on it. The Rattler. Oh, and this one is the Viper. Dang. Well, I cleaned all the connectors we need. The SCSI cables, the PCI slot, the slot and this edge connector, this little RAM thing. I cleaned and reseated it, whatever that is. It had like a little bit of warmth to it, which means it was getting some power, which isn't encouraging because that means it's probably just bad, but sometimes you just reseat the stuff and it starts working. No luck, doesn't see it, just our original drives here. So that's fine. Maybe the card's bad, maybe it's not the original card, maybe this machine isn't compatible with whatever's in there. The documentation was very dense. There might be some magic combination you're supposed to do here, and this thing has been messed with. I'm not sure. I did look up that PCI card with its IBM FRU number, and it's also known as feature number 2493, and it is one of the supported cards, so I don't see anything documentation about it needing to be in a specific slot or anything, so it might just be bad since SMS doesn't even detect it. But we'll forge ahead like this. Sorry to say we're not going to use the BlueSCSI. I'm going to install to this drive. And so let's get AIX installed. AIX can see both disks, and by default it was just going to use the first one it found. When you have multiple disks and you care about where AIX is getting installed, it's really important to get into here. It doesn't give you a ton of indication about what it's going to do. So I think I do 2. And then I remove 1, maybe. There we go. Now we're going to install to the bigger disk. That should be fine. And I think we're just going to let it rip. Really wanted to get this started because I think it's going to take eons. And there it goes. I'll be back in a year. It's always weird for me installing one of these proprietary Unix variants because in my head I kind of associate Linux and Unix together these days based on just the mentality behind the operating systems. But they're very different. I mean, it throws out a ton of stuff. Up here we've got copyright notices for IBM, Sun Microsystems, Unix Systems Labs, a subsidiary of Novell. Yeah, and here's some Hewlett-Packard rights restricted legend stuff. It's so bureaucratic and corporate to install AIX. It's kind of fun, but also it's absolutely ripping. It's only been 22 minutes and we're 93% complete. This might be the fastest AIX install I've ever done. So it rebooted, and I caught it at SMS just to see if it was going to try to boot from the CD-ROM again. And this is pretty interesting. So because this whole system is so integrated, AIX understands this hardware, and think maybe vice versa, I'm not sure. It actually configured the boot order for me. So remember, we were booting from SCSI CD-ROM. It has fixed that itself as part of the install process to now boot from the drive I just installed AIX on. Part of me thinks that's really slick. The other part of me doesn't like the operating system being able to mess with this stuff, but in an enterprise, what they would call an integrated environment, that does make sense. So let's boot. Hell yeah, are you kidding? Look at this. We're going to do some serious computing on this thing. This is fantastic. Let's use the Configuration Assistant Task Guide. Set or verify. Oh, wow. You can do all sorts of stuff. I'm probably going to need to set a root administrator password. This is one of the coolest things I've ever seen, and I've seen a lot of stuff. I've only ever used AAX from the command line usually over serial ports, so this is pretty sweet. I care about a lot of this stuff. We'll get it set up for network, though. I'm going to tell it to use DHCP. It's not plugged in right now. Yeah, I think we're going to want EN0. That's fine. This is actually really nice because it's kind of a pain to do this on the command line. I'm just not familiar with it. Would like to do that all the time. This is going to fail. We'll get online. Don't you worry. Look at this. It gets better. All right, it's telling me that it started up networking. It's not plugged in, of course. See if there's anything else I want to do in here. Web-based system manager. I feel like I want to do all of this stuff, but we'll deal with that later. I'm going to tell it to start this assistant again next time I start, in case I want to do something. This is too good. This is too good. This is CDE, isn't it? Root. Oh yeah, it is. Common desktop environment. And my monitor's really confused. Hit it with the auto adjust. Bam. Ho ho ho. Look at this. Yes. What kind of apps we got on this thing? Got any games on this thing? No games. We might do something about that. Let's hit the calculator. Holy crap. It's a scientific calculator. Do whatever you want in here. This machine's for doing serious work, guys. Alright, I'm going to shut it down for now. We've got some stuff to do, and then we'll be back in here. I don't know how to shut it down. I'm going to literally have to Google how to shut down. Well, actually, I know what to do. I remembered all my stuff. Terminal. Halt. Yeah, see ya. I'm like so happy about this. So, first things first. This drive is unnecessary, and it makes a really annoying whining sound. So I'm going to take it out of the tray, use it for another project someday, and I'll put this tray in here for storage. And then we have some things to do physically with the machine still, and then we'll do some computing. The service processor showed up, bodge wires and all. Wait till you see the back. That is a lot of bodge by IBM standards. So bodge wire is when they think they're ready for a production run, or maybe an early test run, I'm not sure. Probably both. And they've made some mistakes in the PCB layout, and a human has to come in and do these wires called bodge wires. It's pretty fine soldering usually. This one goes all the way down to one of the edge connector pins. And I've always wondered, like, do people get fired over this? This must be an insanely expensive ordeal. I suppose, though, you bodge the first run, and then you fix the PCB, and it's fine. But yeah, I'm a software guy, so the hardware world seems so much more, the stakes seem higher. But anyway, the service processor is here. It goes down in that slot way down in there, and it does have a little guide to kind of hold it up, give it some support, and it's installed. So theoretically, now when I power on the power supply, I should see some activity over this serial port driven by this card, and we should be able to remotely, aka 3 feet from here, power this machine on. Let's see. So I've got a serial cable with a null modem coming off the back of serial port 1. Now likely a more realistic situation would have been like a modem, so you could remotely access this machine from anywhere in the world, basically. So I'm going to give the power supply power. It's got that now, and we'll go see if we see anything on the serial port. And indeed we do. I just connected at 9600 baud, typical settings. What can we do in here? SP setup menu. So this is the service processor menu to configure this thing. And like I was saying, enable disable modem. You can set a password. I didn't even think about that being an issue. That would have been annoying. The system bring up menu. Yes, we can power on the system. Okay, we will do that in a second. Maintenance menu. Yes. Let's read the vital product data, VPD. Oh, good. Just Just what I needed. Environmental conditions. It's powered off, so obviously all the fans are off and everything, but it does have temperature sensors inside that we might be able to read after we boot this bad boy up. So let's go back to the system bring up. Let's power it on. Yes. And it powered on. This is so cool. And in true IBM fashion, RS6000, AS400, both of those lines that eventually merged, we are seeing the status indicators that are on the LCD showing up right here from our remote console. I don't think I hyped this up enough. This is this is really cool. I'm really glad this thing works. It's like 60 bucks. Yes, and now we are getting into SMS. So I think because it detects I'm on the console here, there's actually nothing on the monitor over there. You can only have one or the other, as I understand it. It just played its little tune when it tested the speaker. And I think it's going to start into AIX, and I'll probably get a serial connection terminal prompt for AIX. That's what I'm guessing is going to happen. Also, never get tired of looking at this thing. Whoever cooked this up at IBM, absolute genius. It's back in the AIX configuration assistant. I can't do anything here. So we're back here. I promise when we actually get some stuff installed on this, I will get you on a proper VGA capture situation. I'm just curious if I can log in over the serial port, because that's typically how you'd be able to access one of these machines. And I cannot, at least as far as I can tell. That's fine, I guess. Yeah, this thing is sweet. We got one more upgrade to do, or improvement. But one last thing of note, I did turn the machine off from AIX, and now I'm back in this menu. Makes sense, more or less. The last hardware piece I want to take care of is replacing the operator panel. So obviously I'm missing an LED. It's totally unnecessary. The machine obviously works without that LED there. And in fact, in the documentation, I can't find anything about what these LEDs mean other than the top left one, which is power, unless I'm missing something. Well, let's pop this one in. There's an interesting little piece of metal right here, which I think is grounded to the rest of the case. And it touches this little pin here to ground out this board. So I should be able to just plug it in, and there we go. Let's see if it works. I'll give it power. Yes, I think. Once the power supply kind of warms up, I think that one will start blinking along with this one. This one might be bad, or at least I'm getting different behavior than my original panel. These four LEDs just always stayed on, and that blinking behavior never took place. Let me put the other one back in. That is really weird. Yeah, with this one, we get the OK and the blinking. I am not going to mess with that. I'm not saying this one's bad necessarily, but it's behaving differently, that's for sure, and not in a good way. So much for that adventure. I could, of course, just desolder one of these LEDs, solder it back into my good board, and be on my way. I'd like to tell you I'll do that someday, but I probably won't. I've been thinking about what software to get on this thing, and AutoCAD came to mind, because I'm just picturing, Unix workstations and doing real work. And it turns out AutoCAD stopped supporting Unix after release 13, I think is what I was reading. But I can't find a Unix release. And I don't really know how to use AutoCAD anyway. So that's out. I was also reading that in the Unix world, probably weren't using AutoCAD anyway. They would have been using something called CATIA. So maybe I'll find a old copy of that someday. I don't know. Another popular piece of software that would have been running on Unix machines with graphics capabilities is FrameMaker. So I'm going to try to find a copy of FrameMaker 5.5. It's for producing documents like manuals and stuff like that. Adobe bought them in the 90s. Basically everyone uses InDesign now, but FrameMaker's still out there. And a funny piece of trivia I found in the FrameMaker Wikipedia, Adobe decided not to make an OS X version, which ruffled Apple's feathers. And it says, as late as 2008, Apple manuals for OS X, Leopard, and the iPhone were still being developed on FrameMaker 7 in classic mode. And of course, they switched to InDesign since then. Don't know what they use now. And also, if you are already an RS6000 or PowerPC enthusiast, this won't come as a surprise, but on the IBM website, they are hosting copies of Quake that run on AIX and a little FAQ about how to get it working. And there you go. So I should be able to download the big install, which I think includes the shareware version of the assets, plus the executables to actually run the thing on AIX. And this might be a problem. I was reading I need the AIX Multimedia Services. So I'm going to have to find a copy of that. I don't know what the deal with that is. My AIX is a little newer than what they're listing here. That might be fine. So I'm going to get this downloaded. Let's go find Multimedia Services 6000. Googling Multimedia Services 6000 wasn't yielding much, but I found this article saying they were included on bonus pack CD-ROMs. And I found those for my version of AIX. So that's another thing taken care of. And we're going to use the BlueSCSI as a CD-ROM drive. So I'm reading the documentation. And I can make a folder called CDX, where X is the SCSI ID. So we'll make one called CD5. And I can put any number of ISOs I want in there, and it will alphabetically roll through them. So the first time, it'll use the first one alphabetically. And if I eject it from the OS, it'll act as if the next disk was put in. So I'll name them, 1 through 5 and keep track of what I'm putting on there. And we should be able to put all the ISOs we need on a single SD card. Let's try it out. Getting everything lined up to get this on the SD card. So I've downloaded all the images I have access to anyway. A little bonus for us. Netscape Navigator 1.0. We'll try to install that. I've got both bonus pack CDs, so that requirement I have for Quake should be on there, hopefully. I got a version of FrameMaker, and then I downloaded the Quake binary and executables from IBM's website. Let's go on a little side quest about that. So this is pretty common with old IBM download links. The big install, which I need, is actually on an FTP server. And for some reason, all the modern browsers took out FTP support, which I think is a real shame. So you click and nothing happens and you think it's broken until you realize it's an FTP link. So let's copy that link. And we can use something like FileZilla, and this is what you're going to want to do. I don't know why I copied the whole path. I just need the host name. ftp.software.ibm.com. And you can connect anonymously. So here is the directory listing. And I went into AIX, free software, games. Quake 2 is also an option if Quake doesn't work out for us. And in here was the tarball and the binary I'm going to need, theoretically. And this is really interesting about IBM's FTP servers that are anonymous. They just have like a bunch of stuff in here, like the annual reports from 1994 to 2010, and like random podcasts from 2005. It's kind of interesting to like poke around. Like, what was I looking at? Right. It's really cool to see just random stuff in here. So in the AIX folder, there is a products folder. One of them is Netscape. And it's just some stuff that's been sitting on this FTP server since 1996. And IBM is still hosting it for whatever reason. I don't think there's anything like they don't want on here. I don't know, you could go scrape it and take a look, but I get totally sidetracked and I start digging through this stuff and looking at all of it. It's really interesting, I think. So of course I could get this thing on my network and transfer files that way. But while we're here, I'm going to wrap these files up into an ISO so that I can mount it and pull them over to the machine. I like to use Power ISO for this. You drag them out there. I think we save this as an ISO. We'll call it CD5 Quake files. So we've got all our images. This is the SD card that was in the BlueSCSI. It does produce a log file that tells you a little bit about what it's been up to. This image does not appear to be valid for a Macintosh device image. That is correct. BlueSCSI is typically very vintage Mac focused, but you can use it for all sorts of stuff. So I don't think we need this stuff anymore. And we make a folder called CD5, SCSI ID 5, and then we put all that stuff in there. And let's go see if it works. It's not happy about something. The BlueSCSI is exposing itself as a unknown sized hard disk at ID 1. So I probably got some config wrong on the BlueSCSI. I'm going to try just one ISO image without the folder business and see how that looks. That worked. It's just got the Netscape Navigator ISO on there, and it showed up as CD-ROM ID 5. I did notice in the BlueSCSI log, my firmware was from like 2023. Maybe they added that folder with multiple ISO support later. I'll have to look into that. Let's get into AIX and see if it can see that ISO. That worked. AIX can see the CD-ROM. I'm able to mount it. This old version of AIX doesn't auto-mount, so it's a little involved, but I got it working. And here is the contents of that Netscape CD. And in here, I believe we have the installation files for an RS6000 like this. So what I'm going to do, I'll show you how I mounted that CD and all that, walk you through that. But because we're going to be spending a lot of time on this screen, I think I'm going to figure out a more ergonomic setup here and get a VGA capture going. So I'm going to go do that, and also this mouse is not going to work for us, so I'll get a proper PS2 mouse in there. I'll be back. So here's what I've cooked up so far. I've got a VGA splitter. The source VGA from the machine is going into here. One of them is going to here, so I can see what's going on. Another one is going to an OSSC to do VGA screen capture. I'll show you that momentarily. And then I've got a camera right here so that I can sit at the machine and you can see me. It'll look something like this. Here is the OSSC, and it is taking the VGA in from that splitter, converting it to HDMI out. Big problem though. That VGA card is outputting at 67 Hertz. Let me tell you, HDMI capture cards do not like that. I've got an Elgato cam link. It really does not like what the OSSC is putting out on the HDMI port. And then I've got this cheapo HDMI to USB converter. It just shows a black screen. It doesn't like it either. I haven't had a lot of luck with this one. And I have another, albeit cheap, HDMI to USB converter that is a little more forgiving in my experience, and I cannot find it. This so my normal MO is just chaos, as you can see. It's no longer serving me. I can't find the damn thing. My wife came down here earlier tonight and she was like, dude, what are you doing down here? And she's right, it's a total mess. And I keep misplacing things. I need to clean my act up because I've spent like 2 hours trying to get this HDMI capture. And yeah, I might be technically limited in the end, but it'd be nice to have my other capture device, which I cannot find, obviously, because it's ridiculous down here. But I'll show you how good this thing is. So if I plug in a more or less modern monitor that supports HDMI, so this is coming from the RS6000 converted over to HDMI by the OSSC, it looks phenomenal. Let me move the mouse. Yeah. We got a little bit of an issue. We're a little off on the bottom, but I think we could live with that. There's probably something we could do about it. The OSSC is a champ, so I've got the remote here, and I'm going to turn the menu on. And it does a little overlay if you have a monitor that's willing to show it to you. And I've gone into like output options, and I've been messing with all this stuff, and I can't get any of my capture cards to detect it. So you can just do straight pass-through on 480p, 576p, I think. Then it kind of looks like crap, at least on this monitor. Set it back to normal, or I should say line 2x. I've been messing around in here. I cannot get a capture card to figure this out. So that's where we're at. I might break down and just film the screen, but I'd really like to figure this out because I think it's going to be a much more enjoyable experience. And the whole software part is not even what I like about these machines. I like dicking around like we just did for the last hour. So I'd really like the video quality to be good. Usually I don't worry about that, but I think it's going to be better in the end. So I'm going to keep on trying to make this work. That's where we're at. It's like 2 days later, and I'm losing my mind, guys. Let me show you what I'm dealing with. So as you can probably tell, I've got a ton of stuff. One of which is a Crestron HD Scaler VGA. So it can take VGA, put it to HDMI out. It did not like the defaults coming out of the F40, but I figured out how to change what the F40 outputs. So I took the OSSC out of the equation, got this guy in here, and you can probably tell because I'm recording the screen. I haven't gotten it working fully yet. So let's get into SMIT devices, and we can go to graphic displays. Oh, actually, forgot to tell you the critical piece. It's first important to run lsadder -EL integrated what is that? Integrated graphics adapter 0 to list all the stuff it supports. So I think by default I was on, I think it's called default. Yeah. It's coming out at 1280 by 1024 at 75 hertz. None of my capture devices like that. But these are all the options it supports. So I went in and found all of the resolutions that this thing likes. One of which is 1024 by 768 at 70 hertz. At this point, I should just be filming the screen, but I'm on a mission now. So you go into graphic displays, and then you can select the display type. And that's the one. And then you can see I've got it on that resolution I was just showing you. In SMIT, you can press F4 to show you all your options. And so you can see all these like pre-defined defaults. And I suppose you could Google them online, but the best way I found was this command. So that's where we're at, but that only gets me so far. I've got VGA to HDMI, and this thing likes it, but I need to capture that HDMI somehow. This little piece of crap still won't do it. The cam link won't do it for sure. I need to cross-reference. It supports very few resolutions. Maybe my video card in there can do one of these. This isn't really what this cam link is for. It's not for retro computing or anything like that. I'd really like to be able to use it though, because it seems kind of nice, and I've never been able to use it. But coming straight out of this thing, so the VGA going in, HDMI going out. So I ordered like a $300 Mage HDMI to USB something or other. It's supposed to be here tomorrow. At this point, I should have just been filming the screen, because it doesn't look that bad. I could probably actually just film the HDMI monitor at this point, but we're gonna get it. We're gonna make it work. There's hope. This is the Elgato cam link at 720p over the Crestron VGA scaler. So I got the F40 outputting something that the Crestron likes, that I'm putting the VGA into. HDMI out, that's something the cam link likes, because the Crestron is pretty flexible. I'll show you that. It doesn't look great because the Crestron is doing some scaling. So it's taking whatever it gets in and scaling it down to something the cam link likes. I'm going to mess around a little more. I think we can get this looking better. And I actually just realized you can watch me do it. So I'm pressing the literal physical buttons on the front of the Crestron. And I can bring up a menu. And I can go into output. And I can roll through, one second, the resolutions. It's not going to do it until I press enter, basically. Okay, Elgato like that. That's probably as good as we're... Ooh, that looks like crap. So these are all my options. I don't know. I think this is okay. Oh, doesn't like it. So now what I have to do is plug the Crestron into a monitor. I have some HDMI splitters around here somewhere. So yeah, I'm going to go plug it into the monitor I'm looking at over here that I've been showing you. And I'll basically find the best setup. This is where we ended up. This very expensive Magewell USB capture HDMI device showed up. The OSSC is back out, flown into it, and I'm happy to say it just works. It was even able to record the post screen, the AIX logo. None of my other setups could do that. This Crestron wasn't bad, but we're going to stick with this for a while, see how it goes. Finally, I can introduce you to AIX properly. The Advanced Interactive Executive, IBM's Unix variant from the early mid-80s, I think, and they're still working on it today. Here's the capture setup. I'm looking at the same thing you're seeing, right down to the bottom left looking cut off. That's what it looks like on my real monitor too, so we're gonna roll with it. Open up a terminal. AIX has an interesting tool called SMIT, the System Management Interface Tool. Comes in two flavors. Good old SMIT, that has a GUI, which I'll show you, and SMITI, which is the CLI ASCII version. So, for example, in the terminal we'll run SMIT, and we get this little app. We can go look at devices and configure the graphic displays. That's what I've been doing a lot of. Or we can run SMITI and get the exact same thing over the terminal. Go into devices. Of note, there are these things called fast paths. So I could also say SMIT dev for SMIT devices. And right away, I'm looking at that device list that I had to click into previously. That's SMIT. We're going to use it a lot. I remember thinking it was really weird the first time I ever used it, but it kind of grows on you. We need to mount a CD-ROM. There are 2 CD-ROMs available to me, which we'll see through SMIT, the real one, and then the BlueSCSI. That's what I want to mount. First, we need to make a place for it to go. So I'm going to say root CD-ROM 1. CD-ROM 1 is the BlueSCSI, CD-ROM 0 is the real one that's in the front there. Then we're going to use the SMIT storage fastpath. We're going to go to File Systems, Add Change Show, CD-ROM File Systems. Add a CD-ROM file system. So the device name, I can list out all the devices. It knows about CD1. That's what we want. We're going to point it at my mount point. I think I called it CD-ROM 1. I am going to tell it to mount automatically because we're going to do this a few times, and we'll say go. And then we see the running man, and he had a successful mission. Famous SMIT stuff. But we're not done yet. SMIT mount FS fastpath. The file system name, the one we just made. The directory to mount, CD-ROM 1. The type is CDRFS. There's something else in here. Read only, yes. Done. It's a little involved. Now if we go take a look at the contents of my CD-ROM 1 folder, yeah, there's our Netscape. It's in there. I might have to get a better shell. Let's look at the README. It wants some certain dependencies. I am well beyond AIX 3.1, so I think that's fine. Let's just let it rip. Netscape folder. There is a tarball. Let's just copy that out to my home directory. Tar. Can I do this from memory? Probably should have put that in a folder. Wait, is that it? Do I just run it? Whoa! I do accept the license. That was easy. Okay. One piece of software installed. Why is there no URL bar? I don't think I've used a version of Netscape this old. Unable to locate host. Yeah, this is some old stuff. Go net search. Wow. Netscape Navigator 1 from 1994 running on the RS 6000. Well, let's move onwards. I've got the first of our bonus pack CDs in there. Remember, it theoretically has some dependencies we need for Quake. And the way I did that was I unmounted the previous CD with SMIT, so basically the reverse of what you just saw. Pulled the SD card out of the BlueSCSI, put the new CD-ROM image I want on there, put it back in the BlueSCSI, press the reset button, and then mount everything over again. And now in CD-ROM, we've got user sys inst.images with a bunch of stuff. I think this is some AIX installer stuff. Hey, maybe we're going to get another version of Netscape. We're going to use SMIT again. I can do SMIT install latest. The directory for the software. Oh yes, CD-ROM 1. This is going too smooth. Oh boy. Yeah, I'm just going to let it do its thing. Guy's going to be running for a while. If this works, I'll do this exact same thing with the second CD, and then we'll try to run Quake. Oh, it wasn't even doing anything. It was just deciding what was going to be installed. I'll be back in a little bit. The second CD is in. Chloe has woken up from her nap. Total of 75 what IBM called file sets, which I think are essentially application packages. Packages are going to get installed here. I'm not even going to check if we have the Ultimedia services. Once we're done, we'll bring Quake over. I think the big download, the .z file, which we'll have to uncompress in a special way. You can't just use tar for that or gunzip. It should have some shareware versions of the Quake assets, so we should be good to go. However, even on IBM's website with these very old instructions, it's for a much newer version of AIX. So if it doesn't work, we'll poke around and then we'll learn how to use FrameMaker, huh, Chloe? I pretty much hate this capture setup already. Looks like crap. But I will show you that that guy's actually running real fast. It's not captured properly by the capture setup. And I can't really tell what the bottleneck is. Sometimes you'll see the BlueSCSI do a lot of stuff. And then sometimes you'll hear the drive roar away. Well, I don't know. It failed. He falls down when things don't go well. But I'm fairly certain most of it installed. Bunch of stuff I don't need. Bunch of DB2 stuff. Maybe I'll use it someday. think it's complaining about the fact that it wasn't going to be able to install some certain things because of a prereq failure. I'm going to drag the Quake files over here. So I have brought over the Quake files in a folder called Quake, and we need to use the uncompress tool to get rid of this .z. That's what that means. So the way you make a .z is you run the compress command, and I'm guessing it was just more popular before gzip or whatever. So now we've got a tarball. Because I'm a computer wizard, I can do that by hand. Here it all comes. Yes, that's what I wanted. These pack files. That's a good sign. Place your bets. Go Quake. No way. No way. Is it going to keep running? It is. We are playing Quake on the RS 6000. You probably can't hear it, but the speaker built into the machine is playing the audio. I don't know if I'm going to be too inclined to do anything about that. Easy skill. Let's go. Oh, man. I have not played this in a very long time. Okay, so it would obviously be trivial to get the non-shareware version, but yes, I'm calling this a success. That was like near effortless. I guess I should have tried seeing if I even needed to do all those other bonus back discs, but there you go. Quake on the F40. And now the moment I know all of you have been waiting for is FrameMaker time on AIX. That Quake stuff, so boring, so banal. So let's see. In the FrameMaker CD-ROM, which I mounted, the BlueSCSI's killing it, by the way, making this way less miserable. I got a README. We'll see what we should do. Yeah, I know how to use VI. Okay. Installing on Windows systems. No. Unix systems. Yes. Installing on AIX Unix systems. Okay. This is promising. I need to ensure the correct shared library hookable symbols runtime support is installed. This sounds like an absolute nightmare. Copy. It's very hard to... Anyway. Okay. You remember this. We want to see something that looks like this. User CSS. It's taking its time. Yeah, that's good. We don't have everything we need. We're going to install it anyway. Dude, what is this crap? Just tell me how to install it. Oh, it says if either of these lines appears, you have the correct /s runtime. That's good. That's good. That's good. Talking about Euro currency symbols? Like what? It's unclear how to install still. It keeps talking about like page whatever of the Unix manual. I don't have that. There we go. I need to go read this other README. This thing was secretly a folder. Oh, wow. This sounds terrible. I don't know what a FTK dynamic client is. I have made the executive choice that we do not need Adobe FrameMaker. We need CorelDRAW 3.5. So I've got that in here. And I was looking that I can just run install.cd. I don't know if that's a Unix thing or an AIX thing. Ask me where I want to put it, where I'm getting it from. And then I'm going to install the AIX version. Uh-oh. Why doesn't it like that? Oh, I see. It's a terrible experience. Let me start that over. Install.cd. Why would I install more than one version on one machine? Am I not reading this right? Version or versions. Enter a blank line to end. So I'm supposed to say AIX and then enter. And then I get just AIX. How would I be installing on more than one of these at one time from the same CD? Anyway, here it goes. It's done. Not enough space on the file system. What is all this crap? I would like to install it to HD4, I guess. because HD2 is entirely used up. How did that happen? SMIT! HD4 is root. Unix sucks. We're going to put it in Corel 3.5, because I believe that is a partition on my drive that has space. Yes, I would like to make that. AIX, enter. Yes. Here we go. Lots of free space on that one. It figured that out. Oh, I have so much to learn about Solaris and AIX and everything else. Okay, it took a little bit of finagling because I did not install this to the default path. So I had to set a bunch of stuff before I ran it. But I mean, we're basically graphics designers, guys. Should we draw Chloe? It's vector art too. I think it competed with Illustrator. What does Chloe even look like? Oh yeah. Probably got to get the whiskers on there. Does Chloe smile? Not really. It's pretty primitive. Got some textures. Ooh, okay. All right. That apparently went in Chloe's mouth. Okay. I don't know how to use this thing. Let's change colors. It's a different time. Okay. When's this thing from? Oh, 1992. Okay. It's up there. I was 4 years old. There's CorelDRAW 3.5 running pretty good on the RS 6000, I must say. Effects. Oh, yes. The most amazing effect of all. 45-degree rotation. This is Chloe's body now. Looks pretty good. Couple last things of note. Something odd has started happening the first time I give this power, after I haven't used it in 24 hours or whatever. Only this LED comes on, and I can power it up in this state, so I could press the power button and it would boot up. And then it complains about a service processor error. In fact, I even caught it here on camera. And we don't get any progress indicators on the screen. I think in its normal healthy behavior, it'll eventually say OK right there, and we'll get the blinking green lights we saw earlier in the video. The manual says when you encounter that service processor error, the procedure is to retry what you're doing, which would mean, powering it on again. And if that doesn't work, replace the service processor. So I have seen that once the power supply is warmed up, if I turn it off all the way and turn it on, we get the blinking green lights and the indicator. It says OK on that screen now, and if I was to boot it up in this state, wouldn't have any error codes. Pretty weird. And as I've been filming this, I also picked up a BlueSCSI Ultra Wide 68. This came just last night. I can't remember why I bought it with the tray, but maybe that's useful. It's the 68-pin version, and I believe it's maybe even a little faster than what I've got. I do like that it has Molex and the 4-pin floppy style power, whichever one you want. That is sweet. I wonder. Might have to get an extension for this power, or a little converter. But yeah, I could definitely get... This is so great. Yes, I can definitely get screws in right there. One there, one there. Oh yeah, that's living. So I will obviously be doing that upgrade eventually. That's all I'm going to do with this guy for now. I'm calling this a success. It's fully functional. I know a little bit more about it, and we got all sorts of software running on it. I am slowly working on cleaning some stuff out here and rearranging. I'd like to give it a permanent spot somewhere over here, because as I progress on the IBM I journey, so I've got a Power 6 in the retro rack in the other room that is actively running IBM I, that will be making a return. We haven't even done much with it yet. I'd like to get this in the mix as sort of an access terminal or a workstation that benefits from some software running on the IBM I. Not sure yet, but they're definitely going to get to know each other. So I'd like to have a permanent spot for it down here, and it's kind of one of my favorite things in my collection. So I don't want to just push it away into a closet or storage unit or anything like that. I want it out. But that's going to do it for this one. If you really want to support the channel, please consider subscribing and liking this video if you haven't already. I am very close to 75,000 subscribers, and even though statistically it's very unlikely, I am still trying to get 100,000 subscribers by the end of this year. And of course, I'm on Patreon. I post behind the scenes type videos, what I'm tinkering with, and you also get access to the Serial Port Discord, where I hang out all the time. Thanks for following along. I think throughout the video I kept saying that I installed AIX3 something on here, but I definitely installed AIX4 something. I'm just thinking about that. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this video. Catch you in the next one.